Aloha and welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure coming to you from Waikiki Beach. We call it the Bear Woznick Adventure because all of us are on an adventure, and I get to talk to the most adventurous people, people whose lives have gone in all kinds of different directions and maybe they had never even thought would. And today we have the famous Teresa Tomeo with us, one of our favorite guests. Always a lot of fun, but also very impactful. So we're glad to have Teresa with us. We'll get back to you in just a moment. We introduce Teresa Tomeo. This is the Bear Woznick Adventure.
Welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. Kickstart that engine and roll thunder with the pack. Explore the grittiness of manly spirituality. Gain traction in the virtues. Soup up your spiritual engine by turning adversity into adventure. Now here's Bear Woznick. Let's ride.
Aloha, welcome back to the Bear Woznick Adventure. It's summertime in Waikiki Beach. Yesterday, 2 days ago, Cindy and I paddled out on probably a pretty big day, and she was paddling solo on a 10-foot board, and I saw her paddling so hard to catch a wave that was, well, twice as big as her, and just a great time of celebration here. We had the 4th of July this last weekend. So it's just so great to be here in Waikiki Beach, right next to St. Augustine's Catholic Church by the sea. So, hey, I got a new book coming out, my 4th book, Men of Grit and Grace, Daily Challenges for Men to Chew On. My wife said to call it beef jerky for a man's soul. So I just thought I would read. What it is so many men don't like to read, or they like to read, but they're just too busy to read. So this is 366 morning man meditations for you to start your day out with as part of the rest of your daily morning prayer regimen. So I'm just going to be happening to read the July 11th meditation here from the new book, Men of Grit and Grace. Love. Do you ever want to know what love is? Well, love is when you really, really, really like someone. That's actually by I think his name is John Handy from Saturday Night Live back in the day. But that's, I think, what most people think love is. But here's a quote from Bishop Fulton. The love of a man and woman is a symbol of the love of God for his church. The husband gives himself to his wife, and the wife receives him as the church receives Christ. It's so profound and so deep. And by the way, I should give this warning to the men out there. I think we have about 270 more days till Valentine's Day. So just as a warning, you should already start planning and getting ready for that day. Satan attacks at the core of our identity as fathers and husbands because we are the icons of God the Father, and our marriage is an icon of Christ and his bride, the church. Because of that, Satan hates us. We, as men, must fight off his attacks through our sacrificial love for our wife and our children. The man's love for a woman, this is a quote from St. John Paul II, one of his original writings, Love and Responsibility. The man's love for the woman includes his role as protector, one who defends her dignity and well-being and helps her to flourish. A man who truly loves the woman will respect her dignity, recognizing that she is a person with her own value and not merely an object of desire. I think he goes on to say, but she is a subject of love. John Paul II dared to even contradict what the wise John Handy quote, love is when you really, really, really like someone. JP2 said, love is not a feeling or an emotion, it is an act of the will. True love, therefore, is an act of sacrifice, giving oneself freely and completely. It's from the Theology of the Body, Audience 16. Aquinas said that love is willing the true good for the other, and JP2 basically is saying love is sacrifice. And that's why I think you go back to the G.K. Chesterton quote that marriage is a duel to the death, which no man should reject. In other words, it is. For men, our place is to lay down our lives for our wives and our family. It truly is a duel to the death. And it's part of what we learn as men is to give sacrificial love. Okay, so that's from my new book, Men of Grit and Grace. We have with us today Teresa Tomeo. Ciao, Teresa Tomeo. Aloha.
Ciao, Bear Woznick. Ciao, 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 ciao.
Ciao, ciao, ciao. Where we want your address so we can come visit you, but you're somewhere near Tuscany, right?
No, we're on the border of Tuscany and Umbria. We're actually closer to Assisi. We're about 45 minutes from Tuscany, but about 30 minutes south of Assisi in beautiful Umbria, where the sunflowers are in full bloom everywhere. It's gorgeous.
You know what makes me mad when you're ever reading the lives of the saints or the names of the saint comes up in their liturgy or whatever or something. And it says Saint such and such of Umbria or some town I never heard of. They need to put parentheses in there. So Umbria is near where Teresa lives in Italy. So we know where it is. But I love that.
We'll contact the Vatican about that to update all those, the litany of the saints and the readings and all that. Yeah.
The people out here in Hawaii, we don't know where Umbria is, but you're right in the heart of Saint Francis of Assisi's life.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I wrote the book. And, Deacon Dom and I have been leading pilgrimages here, for 25 years, Bear. You know that. We've been here so many times. And recently, 4 years ago, decided to take the pledge when Deacon Dom resigned from his professional work. Obviously, he's still serving as an active deacon, but we just decided we wanted to be close to the saints. And there's so many here in Umbria. It's known as the land of Saint Francis, the land of the saints, the Green Heart, the Costa Verde, because it's in the center of Italy. We're just north of Rome and to the east of Tuscany. And it's just incredible. And we love it here. And we've learned so much more about Saint Francis. And as I say in the introduction of this new book, Volume 2 of Shrines and Wonders, I think a lot of us, myself included, put this great saint in a box. And kind of we've seen him over the centuries and over the years as, growing up in an Italian-American household, he's prevalent. You see him in the backyard, in the bird bath. You see him in the picture. You see him somewhere in the hallway. And, you're familiar with him, but you don't realize the extent of this man's spirituality. And coming here every year and visiting some of the many places and then, doing a deep dive into his own spirituality really opened my eyes to how great this man was and still is in the eyes of the church. And that's why I decided to write the book.
And the book's subtitle is, it's Italy, Shrines and Wonders, Volume 2. The other one was so heavy, hardly could pack it in your luggage when you go to Italy. But there's another book all about Italy, but this one is specifically Discovering Sacred Spaces and Fascinating Places. Did you rhyme that on purpose?
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Discovering Sacred Spaces and Fascinating Places. Did you rhyme it on purpose?
That's kind of the theme of the, we're doing this branding with the Shrines of Wonder. So discovering sacred spaces and fascinating places across, Italy's off the beaten path in the first volume. Second volume, in the life of Saint Francis. Hopefully the third volume will be all about Tuscany because it's so popular. But I wanted to do fascinating sacred places to make sure our faith was covered and fascinating places so people understand that these places are fascinating. And there's also places that may not be related to the faith directly, but are fascinating nonetheless. So that's where the subtitle comes from.
It's so interesting when you go to Italy or Ireland or places where those saints, where they just come to life for you. But it's so easy for us to, like you said, just kind of, this is where he was born, this is where he died, and we don't really get into the heart of it. But this book takes you on a whole journey, into his life. My mother was a third order Franciscan. Wow. I guess maybe she still is. I don't know if in heaven they still are, but she's probably had a conversation or two with Saint Francis.
Wow, isn't that amazing to think about that? Deacon Dominic, before he discerned the diaconate, was thinking about becoming a third order secular Franciscan. So yeah, it's just incredible, and he has had such an impact, Saint Francis, not just in this area in central Italy where he was born and raised, but all across Italy, and then going all the way over to Egypt and to the Holy Land, which is why the Holy Land is in the custody or the care of the Franciscans, is because he made it there. And think about this. This was in, the 1200s, and he had to take a ship, obviously, across the pond. And that must have been, the guides, when they tell you about his trip overseas, say it probably took at least 3 months compared to the 12 hours it takes to get from, say, New York to Tel Aviv.
And the Franciscans are so prevalent in the Holy Lands too. Was that? Because I know he got to visit Acre, I guess, in the Holy Lands.
Well, in the Holy Land, as I just mentioned, he met first. Well, he went to Egypt to meet with the Sultan, and he was going to pray for the Christians who were fighting in the, as I talk about this in the book, in the Crusades. And so he meets the Sultan. He doesn't convert him, but they do strike up a friendship, and then the Sultan grants him safe passage to Jerusalem. And he goes to Jerusalem and he goes and walks in the path of our Lord. And that's how the Franciscans take root there. And now that's why the Franciscans to this day, whenever you go to any of the churches in Israel, Deacon Tom and I have been there many times, you will see the Franciscans. Now there's other orders that are involved, for example, in the Holy Sepulchre, but the overall custody of the Holy Land is under the Franciscans because of St. Francis.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And here what amazes me is often when you read the lives of these saints, I mean, he died, I think he was 44.
Yeah.
I mean, the impact he had, it gives a sense of urgency to our own life. I don't want to feel, like, I don't mean stressed out urgency, but a sense of urgency that the Lord has a mission for us, and every day is precious. That we can share the gospel and reach out to people. We're talking with Teresa Tomeo, one of my favorite people, in her new book, Italy, Shrines and Wonders, Volume 2, Discovering Sacred Spaces and Fascinating Places in the Life of Saint Francis of Assisi. We'll be right back with more of the Bear Woznick adventure. Schoolofmanliness.com is a place for men of grit and grace to join together, to inspire, to encourage, and to challenge each other to grow in manly virtue. Members receive morning man meditations, a monthly curriculum that is rich with audio, video, and written content, and a trail guide to help you map out your new trajectory. Many of our members lead their sons through this same curriculum. Your membership gives you access to both the Man Cave, which is our non-Facebook type community, and the School of Manliness at schoolofmanliness.com. Become a member at schoolofmanliness.com. Deep Adventure Ministries is grateful to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for underwriting the Bear Woznick adventure on EWTN. Notre Dame Federal Credit Union provides car loans, mortgages, SBA loans, and depository accounts nationwide, as well as 24-hour support. Go to deepadventure.com to find their link, or go to NotreDameFCU.com. Mahalo to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for making the Bear Woznick adventure possible. My newest book, 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone?, has hit the top 5 in Christian books for a good reason. It's because men are searching for traction and a trail guide to live out the unique calling and the gifts that they were born with, that each man individually is factory loaded with by God. Paul said, "Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, do all things in love." Finally, here is a book that talks with men the way men talk with each other. Just plain old straight shooting. By the way, Mama Bears, this is your chance to get this message to your men. Go to schoolofmanliness.com or anywhere books are sold. 12 Rules for Manliness. Where have all the cowboys gone?
This is a warning. The Bear Woznick adventure is dangerous. The radical change Bear challenges you to is not for wimps. Change this station now to a soft rock station before it's too late. You've been warned. Now, here is Bear Woznick.
Aloha, welcome back to the Bear Woznick adventure. I want to invite everyone to some events we're having coming up in Texas. On the 24th, we're having a cigar night in San Angelo. You can go to the familywarrior.org site to find out about the cigar night. The next day, we're going to have a men's group, big old men's gathering there in San Angelo. And then that's on the 24th cigar, 25th is the Sacred Heart Cathedral for the men's group. And then on the 26th, I get to go to my friend Bubba's church, Southern Baptist Church in Waco, Texas, and we're going to talk about the Eucharist. Should be kind of interesting. Should be really cool. And I get to go to another men's group there on the 29th. So if you're in Waco, Texas or San Angelo, let us know. And then on the 1st, we're going to be up in Salina, Kansas for the Eucharistic Conference. So hopefully we can see you guys there. Our guest today is Teresa Tomeo. She's really one of the main I hate to say star, but one of our favorites in the EWTN family, has been for a long time. You know, her background was in regular TV news reporting, and she was called to give all that up and go and become a Catholic broadcaster. But because of her connection with the regular news media, she's often interviewed on What was your most recent interview on secular TV?
I actually just did an interview with Newsmax. I do Newsmax, Fox sometimes, but mainly Newsmax. They're wonderful, and they take more of a balanced, I think, approach. And they do have a lot of really good conservative folks on there who believe as we do. And so it's easy to talk about the faith on that network. But last year during the conclave, Bear, I was, and myself, Dr. Matthew Bunson, Raymond Arroyo, all of us, we were, because I was here, obviously, during that time, went down to Rome. And I was like a revolving door, Newsmax, Fox News, different cable outlets in the United States, radio, everything. And it was nice because I really feel after being with the network now for almost 25 years that we're recognized as the source on Catholicism.
Yes.
And I think it's really incredible. I think for a long time, they just kind of, that's just that funny religious network over there or something, and that cute nun that started it. But they realize now the solid people we have on the air, the great bishops, the great speakers, the great teachers, the PhDs, the Scott Hahns, and they recognize us as an authority in Catholicism. And so we're able to really do a lot of different interviews, which I really enjoy. I like being on the other side of the microphone or the camera. I think it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. And our beautiful Mother Angelica was Franciscan. Was part of the France.
Yes, she was. And there's a chapter in the new book where we're written by Father Joseph Mary Wolfe, who's our chaplain at the network, and he knows all about Saint Francis. And I said, Father, you have to write a book about the Franciscan spirituality of BWA762. And I think he did such a beautiful job. There's a great picture in there with him and Mother Angelica. And he did a cute little video for the book standing in front of the St. Mary of the Angels Chapel on the BWA762 campus, our campus in Irondale. And we posted that on my Facebook page as well. So I couldn't write a book about St. Francis and be working for EWTN and not mention our spirituality, because not only in Irondale, at our main campus, our main network where all the action happens, Master Control, also in Hanceville, about an hour away, is the shrine. And you walk onto that campus and you feel like you're in Assisi. They did such a beautiful job of making it look so familiar, to anyone who's been to Assisi, and very Franciscan there as well. So I think I have a lot of interesting stories in the book, and I have a lot of places. I think people will enjoy it, even if they can't get over to Italy this year for the 800th anniversary of the passing of St. Francis. This is a holy year. This is a holy year of St. Francis. But you can pilgrimage with me through that book, because I take you to some really cool places that a lot of people don't visit when they're here, unfortunately, and I really think they should. Places that were touched in the life of St. Francis, places that formed him, places people don't know about, but they're all beautiful.
It's really like going to Italy. You can be walking by a church or something, and it's overwhelming. You don't know, you have no idea why that church, with your books we do, but I like going to Rome and staying in, I guess, the Trastevere area, right?
Yeah,
Priest for Life is, I can't say it right. Yeah. And then there's certain... I'll take your word for it. But that's Severe. But there's a couple of churches there, and I just... I just take for granted, but the profoundness of right near where you and I stay when we go there, and it's just we're missing out. And these books are not a travel guide; they're actually a spiritual pilgrimage guide. These books. So then, tell us some of the stories. I know I'm going to say this to everyone. In your book, Italy Shrines and Wonders, Volume 2, Discovering Sacred Spaces and Fascinating Places in the Life of Saint Francis of Assisi, Teresa Tomeo, you give these statistics. The current statistics say that the movement includes 650,000 Franciscans in 110 countries, including approximately 35,000 Franciscan friars, 60,000 Poor Clares, 150,000 Third Order regular religious sisters and brothers, and 400,000 single and married men and women who follow the way of Saint Francis as secular Franciscans. So that's a major impact. So tell us some of the stories that as you've gone around through, if we were to take this book with us, what would we discover?
Well, I think you would discover, and this is something that really was an eye-opener for me, and I've spent a lot of time with the Franciscan here in Assisi interviewing them and getting more information, that a lot of people don't know this, but St. Francis spoke about the Eucharist and preached about the Eucharist more than anything else. And most people, again, as I say in the introduction to the book, we kind of put him in a box and think that he mostly preached about creation. And even though, of course, he gave us the canticle of the creatures or the canticle of the sun, he loved creation, and he did the path of the birds. And I talk about that in the book, which is a special place outside of Assisi. It was the Eucharist, and it was his love of the Lord and the respect for the priesthood, because, I mean, you're the son of a deacon, I'm the wife of a deacon. He was a deacon, he was not a priest, and a lot of people don't even know that. And so I try to give people an inside look into his spirituality, and I think you can see that in the places I take you. For example, we take you to Greccio, and Greccio is a little town. It's also a mountaintop shrine in northern Lazio, and Lazio is the region of Rome, and it butts right up to Umbria. So if you're looking at a map of Italy and you see Rome, that's the Lazio region. Italy has 20 regions. Lazio is just below Umbria, where Saint Francis was born. And so in the northern part of Lazio, right before you get over to the Umbria border, there's this beautiful little mountain town, and there's a very pretty collection of hills where he decided, after he saw Bethlehem in the Holy Land, decided to come back to Italy and to establish the first live creche. And he did that because of love of the child Jesus and love of the Eucharist. There's a beautiful story, a shrine you can visit. A lot of people don't go there. And then one of my absolute favorite places, it's one of my favorite towns in all of Italy. It's Gubbio, and the story of the wolf of Gubbio. Now, some people say it was legend. It's just a cute story. But when you go to San Francesco de Pace, there's 2 churches in Gubbio associated with the wolf. There's one in the city. There's one outside the city where we actually met the ferocious wolf. But in the actual city, in San Francesco del Pace, the church in Gubbio, it's the only church that has a tomb of a canine. And they found bones of a wolf in that tomb. And so some people can say it's legend or it's a nice story, but if you talk to the people in Gubbio, it really happened. And Gubbio is such a beautiful medieval city.
Tell us what happened. What was the story?
Well, the story is that there is a very ferocious wolf that was terrorizing the animals and even the landowners in the Gubbio area. It was so bad, he was so ferocious, that they actually wouldn't go outside the city after a while. And St. Francis heard this story and made his way over from Assisi to Gubbio, which is still in Umbria. Gubbio's north. It would have been, I don't know how many days walk. It's about an hour drive from Assisi. So he goes to Gubbio, and he plans on meeting the wolf in the woods, which is where the local people told him the wolf was hanging out at the time. And so they all follow him, they get behind him, and he's outside the city walls at this point. And the wolf comes walking from the forest, from the trees, and is about to charge St. Francis, and St. Francis raises his right hand. And he talks to the wolf, and he says, "Brother Wolf, I know that you're attacking the animals and even the people because you're hungry, not because you're bad, not because you're mean." He said, "I promise you, if you change your ways, the people of the town will take care of you and they will feed you." And he blessed the wolf, and the wolf literally bowed down. And there's a beautiful statue of St. Francis inside the church, outside the city walls where this meeting took place, built on the spot. And a statue of a wolf who is down on the ground. I have a picture of it in the book, with his paws extended and his head almost on the ground right next to St. Francis. And according to the people of the town and the notes that have been passed on, the information that's been passed on century after century, the wolf became the mascot of the town, and he would go around and people would feed him. And they loved him so much they decided to bury him. And so, you can say what you want, but also there's a really cool video that I did. I have a series on St. Francis. I should have mentioned this earlier, that I did with EWTN. It's The Unknown St. Francis. And it's for free. You can just go to EWTN.com/St. Francis. There's 8 parts. And so I take you to Greccio, I take you to Gubbio, and you can actually see the tomb of this wolf. And we take you to the church outside the city where that meeting took place. So it's just a beautiful story about Francis's way. And then there's another place that I love. It's become one of my favorites as well. And this is called the Path of the Birds. And this is also in the book.
You know what, Teresa? You know what happens when you have to take a break?
Oh, yeah. Time to take a break. We need music, though. We have to have back timing music.
They're going to put the sound of motorcycles in when we're done for the break. But we don't have any music. You just have me just interrupting you.
That's okay. but you the radio host. I get it.
But you switch subjects right at the right moment. So we're talking with Teresa Tomeo about her newest book, Italy, Shrines and Wonders, Volume 2, Discovering Sacred Spaces and Fascinating Places in the Life of Saint Francis of Assisi. It's her second volume of the journeys in Italy. We'll be right back with more of the Bear Woznick adventure. People love our EWTN TV show, Long Ride Home with Bear Woznick. Thanks to you, the show has won 4 different Tally Awards. And now, instead of waiting each week for the next episode to air, You can actually binge watch our show and even share it with your friends when you go to deepadventure.com and join the Mama Bears or the Man Cave. Along with all the other benefits, you get total access to all the seasons of our aired episodes, plus instant access to episodes that won't even air for several months. Long Ride Home with Bear Woznick, a great way to communicate the gospel in a gritty enough way that even tough men will stop and watch at deepadventure.com. Here is a YouTube video short, which is based on an excerpt from my newest book, 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? Don't be a quitter. As my ninja sensei used to say as he pushed down on my shoulders, assisting me in doing push-ups, you can do one more of anything. When I paddled my surfboard across the treacherous Molokai Channel, it was just one paddle stroke at a time across those 35 miles. When I pedaled my bicycle across the United States, it was just one more pedal stroke at a time that got me across. To a cowboy, being a quitter is as bad as being a horse thief. When someone quits, they leave others holding the bag and having to do their work, or worse yet, they leave them in a dangerous position. We need to carry our own backpack. Louis L'Amour said in The Education of a Wandering Man, much was forgiven if a man had courage, integrity, and if he did his job. If a man gave less than his best, though, somebody always had to pick up the slack, and he was not admired.
Be the kind of man that when he gets out of bed in the morning, the devil says, "Oh no, he's up." Go to deepadventure.com and invite Bear to speak.
Aloha, welcome back to the Bear Woznick Adventure. We want to invite the Mama Bears and the men out there to go to our website, schoolofmanliness.com. We do have a landing place there now for the Mama Bears to go because we have a weekly blog that we post for you. But the School of Manliness is, of course, for the men. And we have a man cave there. It's a non-Facebook community of men that you can join and become part of, men. And actually, if you become part of the man cave, you actually automatically become part of the School of Manliness. Every Saturday morning, we send out you a curriculum, which is videos and sometimes questionnaires, just a curriculum that you can do maybe on a Saturday morning and maybe lead your sons through it too. They can have access, username and password access, and you can track their progress through the School of Manliness. But the young men, the younger men cannot be part of the man cave. They have to be at least 21. So go to schoolofmanliness.com and become a member. Every morning we send you out an excerpt from the catechism. Every morning you get a text with the catechism, and we work our way line by line through the entire catechism. So, and then you also get this radio show, the video version of the radio show sent to you too. So come to schoolofmanliness.com. Every man, I think the Bible pretty much clearly says, act like men, be strong, be on the alert. It doesn't say act like a man, because to be a real man, you have to be in the company of other men, because the other men will form you. So act like men, become part of our School of Manliness at schoolofmanliness.com. We have with us today Teresa Tomeo. It's such a delight, just such a delight. I don't know why I love you so much. I always get happy when I see you. But it says,
Same here.
It says her newest book is Italy's Shrines and Wonders, Volume 2, Discovering Sacred Spaces and Fascinating Places in the Life of Saint Francis of Assisi. And you were about to tell us the next story. Do you remember where we were going?
Yes, I do. We were going outside of Assisi to the Path of the Birds, and there's actually 3 spots in Umbria, believe it or not, associated with Saint Francis and the birds. And I have pictures in the book as well. And I just fell in love with this place. I was doing some research and I wanted to say, okay, where did he preach to the birds? Because there's images, as you know, if you've been to Assisi, there's images of him, especially in the upper part of the church. There's this famous, beautiful painting of him preaching to the birds and St. Clair standing next to him. And one of the guides told me a few years ago, there's actually a path where this happened. And so the reporter and me started investigating. And there's a whole area, literally there in the middle of nowhere, about half hour outside of Assisi, near another beautiful town called Bavagna. And there's a church in Bavagna connected with the Path of the Birds. And he walked in this area and would talk to the birds. And there's a beautiful statue that's in this one spot. And right next to the statue is an open air church where they have pews and they have a beautiful altar that's carved with all kinds of birds into the altar. It's beautiful. So you can have mass there, you can have meetings there. And that statue is called Fill the Sky with Song. And they had a competition back in 2020 because there were some people in Umbria that wanted to take over that land, even though they knew it was historic and associated with St. Francis, and wanted to take the land over and put solar panels there. And so the cultural community and the religious community of the area got together and said, no way. And so they decided to really officially mark the path. There was already one shrine down the road that was like a standalone shrine with little seats and whatnot, and another beautiful image of St. Francis. I always also have a picture there. But this area is where he walked and where he played with the birds on his way to these different towns. And so it's a very specific area. And now it's marked officially. And then there's the shrine. And then in the town of Bavagna, they have a church dedicated to St. Francis where there's a stone on which he rested while he was preaching to the birds. And so there's this whole section. It's part of the Way of St. Francis. If you're a pilgrim and you are following the Way of St. Francis, there's all kinds of places to go. But this is one of the options you have when you're in central Italy, is to go on the path of the birds. It's so pretty there.
Well, was there an event? Wasn't it at his death that the birds came to, or am I remembering wrong? Wasn't there an event close to his death? Well,
the angels came to him. He was lying down looking up at Assisi. He passed away at the Porciuncula, which is inside St. Mary of the Angels, Santa Maria de Angeli, which is in the lower part. It's actually, the town is actually named after the church now, but that would have been in the valley below. And there's the rose garden there where the birds would come to him. Then that's a little area at the time where he died, where the chapel of the transit was and still is. You can go and actually venerate that spot. But there's so many little nooks and crannies that were so important to him. Even the Battle of Collestrata, which was between Perugia and Assisi. That's really cool too. That whole area. Yeah.
So the Battle of Collestrata, that was right there in Italy. It wasn't like on a crusade someplace, right? It was right there near his.
No, that was right there, and you know this because you've been to Italy. You know, there's so you look at Italy, the countryside, like our little village. We live in a walled village with 200 people.
And what's the address again? Because we want to come visit.
Yeah. I'll give it to you off air. I'll give it to you later.
Just kidding.
But so there's all kinds of walled villages in Italy, and it wasn't just to make it picturesque. It does make it picturesque now, centuries later, but Italy's only been unified since, I think, in the middle 1900s, right? It hasn't been unified that long. And it was for protection. And so there's all these different walled cities because there were so many battles. Yes. And Perugia and Assisi to this day are rivals. And there was a big battle, and St. Francis went to fight for Assisi, and Assisi lost at the Battle of Collestrata, and that ended up putting him in prison for 2 years, where he became very sick, and that slowly started him to kind of wake up and smell the cappuccino, because he had been living, a wonderful life. He was born into a very wealthy family. His father took him to France, which is actually how he got the name Francis, because his father was a big fan of the French. And so he was used to a very, opulent lifestyle. And then he really started to think about it when he was in prison in Perugia, but wasn't quite there yet. So, but that whole area of the Battle of Collestrata, you can see it right off the freeway, and you can actually go to the village. Now, it's interesting. They don't have any signs that say, okay, here was the Battle of Collestrata, but technically you can figure it out because it's right outside the little town. Right. And it's funny because I say in the book that the only thing that people would be fighting for today in Collestrata would be for a parking spot, because now the place has a big shopping mall, which I go to quite often. It's quite a nice mall. But yeah, there's all these different places. You turn around, oh, he was there. Oh, he was there. This book, Bear, could have been 700 pages because there's so many places. One of my girlfriends was staying up in with her family up in Cortona. She's like, oh, this great church. Francis was here. And somebody else told me, well, he was here. I said, I know he's been all over, but I can only put so much in one book. So maybe I'll have to write another one. But it's fantastic. I just love him so much.
The wonder of Italy, and especially your love for it. Saint Francis, when he was wealthy, but after this battle, as you say, he was in prison for a while. He got very, very sick, but at one point he renounced his father's wealth.
Yes, in the middle of the streets of Assisi. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and give us the details on that.
Well, that's quite a story, and there's actually beautiful frescoes in the upper basilica of San Francesco, his place where he's buried in Assisi, but also in St. Mary Major, where Carlo Acutis is buried, St. Carlo Acutis, which is in the center of Assisi. Like when you go to Assisi, you start, if you look up, you've got San Rufino, which is a big cathedral, then you've got St. Clare, then you've got St. Mary Major, and then down, if you're looking at the mountain, the Basilica of Saint Francis is the one that's the lowest, up on Monte Sebastiano, where Assisi is located. But what's so interesting about that spot is the reason St. Carlo Acutis wanted to be buried there is because he had such a heart for the poor, like St. Francis. And that spot in front of the bishop's residence was where St. Francis tore his garments in front of his father and said, I'm done with this lifestyle, and laid everything down right there. So it's very, very significant in terms of the location. And there's even places in Assisi, for example, it's incredible. 2 years ago, I was with Steve Ray and I were doing a pilgrimage.
I love Steve Ray. I want to go with you guys on a pilgrimage.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We'll come on your next pilgrimage.
So we're in Assisi, and the guide's talking, and the guide says, you see this? He takes us down the street in Assisi. I've never been there before. I've been to Assisi a gazillion times. He says, okay, you see this building? We're like, yeah. He said, this used to be the home of a very wealthy family. And the family had a son who was best friends with Francis. And when Francis went off to start the Friars Minor, the parents of St. Francis came to this young man and said, you're the only one who could talk sense into our son. So go down there in the valley and turn him around. He spends 3 days, he becomes a Franciscan. So that didn't work. But again, there's all these great stories about his zeal for the Lord. And I just get excited talking about his ministry.
It's kind of like saying, I don't want my child to go off and follow I don't know, the Grateful Dead or something. Let's like go talk sense to him, and then he just converts it. That was his first member. That was really the first person, right, to join with him, wasn't it?
Yeah, one of them, because in the early days, in terms of the Franciscans, there were only about 5 or 6, and they actually spent a lot of time in this one place called Rivitorto, which is a great, beautiful church in Lower Assisi, where they actually had these 2 huts, and you go into this church, and this is where they lived when they started their ministry. So yeah, it's just amazing in terms of these places and where he went. And he was so faithful to the church. People thought he was like this, free-willing hippie and everything, who was just, he loved God, he loved nature, and they really didn't care about church rules. But no, nothing could be further from the truth. He always sought the help, a yes from the Pope. Wouldn't do anything without papal authority. Yes. And then also, when he went to Mother
Angelica did, like Mother Angelica.
Yes, same thing, exactly. Yeah. And when Francis went to Laverna to pray, and where he received the wounds of Christ, the stigmata, that was happening in the midst of a crisis in the Franciscans, because many were against him because of the strict rules.
Well, let's talk about that when we come back, and I also want to talk about the Poor Clares.
Sounds good.
We're talking with Teresa Tomeo. Her newest book is Italy's Shrines and Wonders, Volume 2, Discovering Sacred Spaces and Fascinating Places, The Life of Saint Francis. It's a great book. You shouldn't go to Italy without her books. We'll be right back with more of the Bear Woznick adventure.
Deep Adventure Ministries is grateful to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for underwriting the Bear Woznick adventure on EWTN. Notre Dame Federal Credit Union provides car loans, mortgages, SBA loans, and depository accounts nationwide, as well as 24-hour support. Go to deepadventure.com to find their link, or go to NotreDameFCU.com. Mahalo to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for making the Bear Woznick adventure possible. Here is a YouTube video short, which is based on an excerpt from my newest book, 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? Don't be a quitter. As my ninja sensei used to say as he pushed down on my shoulders, assisting me in doing push-ups, you can do one more of anything. When I paddled my surfboard across the treacherous Molokai Channel, it was just one paddle stroke at a time across those 35 miles. When I pedaled my bicycle across the United States, it was just one more pedal stroke at a time that got me across. To a cowboy, being a quitter is as bad as being a horse thief. When someone quits, they leave others holding the bag and having to do their work, or worse yet, they leave them in a dangerous position. We need to carry our own backpack. Louis L'Amour said in The Education of a Wandering Man, much was forgiven if a man had courage, integrity, and if he did his job. If a man gave less than his best, though, somebody always had to pick up the slack, and he was not admired.
Are you still listening? I thought we warned you to change to an easy listening station. Well, you asked for it. Here is more of the Bear Woznick adventure.
Aloha, welcome back to the Bear Woznick Adventure. You guys, my book, 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone, is available, through EWTN or wherever you can buy books, Amazon. Our website, schoolofmanliness.com. It's a really, really cool book. It talks with men like men were sitting on the back porch having a cigar, or a shot of whiskey or something, and just talking story, as we say in Hawaii. But my newest book, Men of Grit and Grace, Daily Challenges for Men to Chew On, is being released. You can pre-order it right now. So stoked about that book coming out too. And Mama Bears, it really is your kuleana, as we say in Hawaii, your job, your stewardship to get these books into the young men that are in your household, maybe still in school, and into the men in your life and your husband. So 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone, and Men of Grit and Grace, Daily Challenges for Men to Chew On. Get those both. They're kind of like matching books. They both have really cool pictures of cowboys on them, of course. We're talking with Teresa Tomeo. Her newest book is Italy, Shrines and Wonders, Volume 2, all about Saint Francis. So you were about to tell us another story, and then I want to talk about the Poor Clares.
Okay, which story was I on? I did the Path of the Bird, did Colas, we did the son of his friend. I'm trying to remember there's so many stories. I can't even,
why don't you start with the Poor Clares, and then we'll come back to that when it comes back to our memory. Because I really want to spend time talking about the Poor Clares.
Well, the Poor Clares are amazing. Of course, named after Saint Clare of Assisi, who's the patroness of television. And you should look up that story. It's really cool. I think you probably already know it. But anyhow, Saint Clare heard Saint Francis speak in Assisi outside the church of San Rufino. San Rufino was the first actually patron of Assisi, and it's a very important church. It's actually a cathedral there, and it's a very, very, very important church that's still operating, and where most of the people in Assisi who live there, who are practicing Catholics, attend. And she heard him preach outside of San Rufino. That was it. She was done. She wanted to follow him. And she had a real challenge from her family, because she too came from a wealthy family. And her family said, no, you're going to get married. You're going to continue this line of, of greatness. And she said no, and they tried to physically remove her more than once. The same thing with her sister, but it didn't work. And they finally gave in when they saw how much she really believed in the life of St. Francis and what he was doing. And down in St. Mary of the Angels area, outside the Ponticular and that basilica, is where Francis conferred the habit on St. Clare. And so the Clares actually prospered, and they're based still, the main, where everything happened. Actually, where he first heard Christ speak to him was in the convent of San Damiano, which was owned and operated by, the Dominicans, not Dominicans, but by a local church there. It was a church, and eventually the Poor Clares took over that. But that's where the cross was hanging originally, just outside the city walls of Assisi, in the Church of San Damiano, which he did rebuild, by the way, after he started his work.
But tell us about that. You just know so much, but not all of us know so much. So this is where Jesus said, rebuild my church.
There's the San Damiano cross, which it's kind of confusing because it's called the San Damiano cross because of its original location, which was in the convent of San Damiano, the church just outside the city walls in Assisi. It is now located in the Basilica of Santa Chiara, St. Clare. Okay, it's upstairs. You walk in the church, you go right, you go to the chapel, you go down to her tomb, come out. It's a beautiful reliquary there. But that's where Francis heard the voice of God. It was after the experience that he had in Spoleto, where he was on his way down to fight for the papal army and got sick and got stuck in Spoleto, and that's where he heard the voice of God. And when he came back to Assisi, he went in the convent or the Church of San Damiano to pray. And he said to Francis, rebuild my church, because as you can see, it's falling in ruins. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about the message of Christ and what St. Francis heard, because Francis built the church both physically, rebuilt the church physically and spiritually, because the church of San Damiano was literally in ruins. And so that's what he thought Christ meant. But then he also realized that he wanted him to bring more souls to him, obviously. But he had such respect for the beauty of the Mass and the church as a structure for priests that he did rebuild churches, several of them, as a matter of fact. San Damiano. He also rebuilt the Porciuncula, which was very special to him. And there's another church in nearby Ribatorto, a town about 10 minutes from Assisi, where he built the Church of San Pietro, rebuilt the church. And he did that after he started his order. He would go around begging for money to give to the priests. He wanted to make sure the linens were properly taken care of, that the priests had proper vestments, that the altar that everything was clean, all because, why? Because of the Eucharist. So it's just endless in terms of what he did in such a short period of time.
In your book, you talk about how he would kiss the hands of the priests out of reverence, because they would hold the host during the transubstantiation. That in fact, I think he felt like he was unworthy to. Yeah,
he did. He felt unworthy. That's why he wouldn't allow himself to become a priest, even though he was so knowledgeable and loved the Lord so much, and had he was set such zeal for Christ and the church, but he didn't feel worthy. And when he did the Mass at Greccio, obviously he was able to read the Gospel and preach, but he didn't celebrate the Mass. But there was a miracle that happened at Greccio as well. He refused to put any people in that scene of the live nativity and just wanted hay in honor of the baby Jesus. And during the Mass, during the consecration, the baby Jesus appeared on the hay. And there are stories to this day of miracles that occurred from people when they came to that cave. They actually touched something, or such, maybe a sick child or something, to that hay. So it's just amazing stories all over Italy about this great saint.
Speaking of the Eucharist, I'm sure you've heard this statement before, but someone was saying how the very fact that Jesus was laying in a manger, which is where the animals would come to feed out of that manger, that Jesus, the child Jesus is our food, is our spiritual food. What is it about? Mangiare, yeah. I know I was surfing in France, and I was surfing up at the cliffs above Biarritz, and this mother comes up to me and says, "Tell my son mangiani," because he wouldn't eat his breakfast. He was too enthralled with the surfers, and I had to tell him, "Eat your breakfast, mangiani." Right? It's French. French is very similar. What do you say in French? It's just, yeah. But okay, so I want to ask you too. Maybe we have enough time. I want to ask you about the stigmata of Saint Francis that happened late in his life. Can you tell us that story?
Sure. That was, as I mentioned earlier, in the region of Tuscany, which is to the northwest of Umbria. So you've got Lazio, where Greccio was, which is where Rome is located. Then you've got Umbria, and you've got Tuscany. Now, he was also in other places in Italy, but those are the three main areas. And so he went to find a place of solitude to pray, and that land was given to him, that area where the shrine was eventually built in the Hermitage was given to him, bequeathed to him by a close friend. And so he went up to this area to pray, very remote. I mean, that's the other thing that's so incredible about St. Francis. When you go to these shrines like Greccio, now, we're adults, and if we're in halfway decent shape, we climb up the stairs, but it's pretty high up. I mean, you have to go up, by bus to the mountain and then go upstairs. And Laverna is crazy. The first time Deacon Dom and I went up there, we're going around and around and around in the car. And St. Francis walked there from Assisi. And out loud, I said, "Okay, St. Francis, I get the solitude thing, but this is ridiculous."
I think I went up there. I think we went up there in a bus. We had a limited time, and I didn't think the bus could make it up that hill.
It was crazy. But he was praying there, and he was very distraught about the division that was occurring among the Franciscans. There were some who were following him. There are others who thought he was too strict, others who thought he was too free. And so it was a big challenge for him, and he really struggled. And right after that, after receiving the stigmata, he was praying to be more like Christ and to feel the pain of Christ. When he received the stigmata, it almost blinded him in terms of his suffering. And so he carried that. And for the last 2 years of his life, he was very, very sick. But that place is phenomenal. There's a shrine. There's another beautiful reliquary with some of his habits, some of his robes. And they have a little chapel that actually marks the spot where he received the wounds of Christ. So that's a really beautiful place to go. That's in Tuscany. It's not too far from Florence. So if you're visiting in the area of Tuscany, and I would definitely say it, especially this year, the year of St. Francis.
I've been telling my wife now, we have our sailboat out in the Virgin Islands, and we sail. That's my time to get away for a month or two. And that's the time of writing and stuff in my life, because my life has this kind of busy and slower pattern to it. But I said, let's not go to the boat let's go to Tuscany. I want to go to Italy. The problem with Italy, the only problem I have with Italy is their ruins are so outdated. I think they need to get some new ones. That's my only complaint.
That's why they're called ruins. They're outdated. Ruins.
Oh, okay.
Tuscany, I love Tuscany, but I got to show you Umbria. There's nothing like Umbria that beats the cake, I'm telling you, or the pizza.
I want to come and I want to find a place there and stay for 2 or 3 weeks, and just have a time of writing, because that's what that time of my life is. But we got to go already, Teresa.
Okay.
Teresa Tomeo, one of our favorite people. And how did you get Dr. Marcellino D'Ambrosio to write the foreword?
He's Italian.
He's so
Italian.
Smart. I know. I tell him he's
Yeah.
related to the Bishop Ambrosio in Milan, but he denies it from back in the day. So Italy's Shrines and Wonders, Volume 2. Discovering Sacred Spaces and Fascinating Places in the Life of Saint Francis of Assisi.
Yeah, published by EWTN. They can get it at the religious
Get it at EWTN, the catalog, or of course any place that you can find books or Catholic books. Amazon too.
You're the best, Bear. Thank you.
Okay, we love you. Ciao, ciao.
Love you more. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks for listening to the Bear Woznick Adventure. Find more manly conversation at the Bear Woznick Deep Adventure YouTube channel. Subscribe and ring the bell.